Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show. Game of Thrones is a smash hit show from HBO, an adaptation of the hit best-selling fantasy series A Song of Ice and Fire, written by George R.R. Martin. It's a part fantasy, part historical intrigue, part character drama, and part political war saga. The TV show is now in its 5th season, and the plot machinations are so varied and complex that I'm not even going to try and catch you up on it. Just go and rent the DVDs or something or borrow them off a mate. Anyway, Season 5 begins with a lot of new things happening, new places, new faces, and new ideas. And this is true right from the start, as we open up on a flashback to a young Cersei and friend. And that hasn't happened before. Flashbacks, that's a total no-no. But they're going through the woods, and then they end up talking to like Chips and Beans Lady Gaga lookalike called Maggie the Frog. She hasn't got that in the show, but I've read the books. Anyway, Maggie tells the narky wee princess 3 prophecies. That she'll marry a king, not the prince she's intended to, but she'll become queen until a younger, prettier one comes along, and that the king will have 20 kids, but she'll have 3, and they'll all die. Now all this is kind of wink wink nod nod foreshadowing, but then we cut to modern day Cersei, and she's being her usual bitchy self. And while Charles Dance cashes in his easiest paycheck ever, Cersei tears into Jaime about letting Tyrion go at the end of season 4. Because letting him go is what led to Tywin's death, and Jaime looks a wee bit put out, but then she ends up getting snide at her newly religious and minimally dressed cousin, who, she was having a sly fling with while Jaime was away in prison. But a lot of the rest of the episode is catching up with the different cast members and seeing what everyone's doing now, and so many things have changed at the end of season 4. Littlefinger's managed to get rid of little Lord Aaron or put him off in someone else's hands while he masterminds some scheme or other, while Sansa sits and watches and learns, and she's learning pretty fast. Meanwhile, Brienne is getting sassy at poor wee Podrick, all because she lost Arya, and now she's upset. Meanwhile, over the Narrow Sea, the escaped Tyrion is being a mopey drunk, and Varys is desperately trying to get him to meet with Daenerys. But it's taking some convincing, because Tyrion would far rather just get drunk and be depressed in peace. But that's all really early days. Oh, and I almost forgot, the Tyrells are still trying to play political chess by marriage, and it's proving a lot easier for Margaery than it is for Loras. But the real meat of this episode is over the Narrow Sea with Daenerys, and she's having problems because ending the slave trade in all these cities has led to some random murders of the Unsullied at the hands of these masked people called the Sons of the Harpy. Meanwhile, she's also got political troubles with one of the other slave cities she conquered, but they seem to be happy to do away with the slavery in the Old Order, but they want to keep the fighting pits opened, because, everybody loves those gladiators. Now, naturally, she refuses, kind of like the teenage liberal lefty that she is, but it's only when Dario, or Fancy Man, points out that he grew up as a gladiator that she starts to realise the world's a lot more complicated than she thinks. And then she gets her next big fright because she goes to visit her 2 chained-up dragons. Now, they're all sorts of wild and angry. They've really gotten out of control. But she maybe should have been going in and patting them on the head once a day or so. Yeah, you should have done that, hen. And finally, up at the wall, Jon Snow is busy training recruits, but tensions are running really high there. Nothing's going easily for him. Sir Alistair Thorne's scowling at him, Melisandre being creepy and kind of coming on to him a bit, which is weird. And Stannis now wants him to convince Mance Rayder to bow to him and, get the Wildings on side with Stannis, which is never going to happen. So Jon's in a bit of a pickle. And, Mance keeps refusing, even once he's been told that he'll get burnt at the stake if he doesn't play along. And so Jon's feeling really left out. But finally, when the flames get started and things are looking grim, he does the decent thing, and he puts the frowny Wilding King out of his misery, because, that's what a Stark would do. So what did I think? Well, this is the kind of episode that you'll often get at the beginning of a TV show on the new series. It's a kind of a remind everyone what's going on, figure out what all the characters are doing, see what's happening where and when, and see what everybody's aims and motivations are going forward. Now, so much had happened at the end of last season that you're going to need an episode like this really to kind of give the audience a vague idea with what people are actually doing now. So, it's a good idea that they've actually established now that there's a lot of tensions at the wall with Jon. They're actually showing that Daenerys, because every time at the end of a season, she always seems to do something really awesome, like takes over a city or frees some slaves or proclaims herself king or queen of the universe or something. And this time, it's showing that, she has actually got to rule and rule these cities well. And it's not easy, because it's not just a case of walking in and saying, hey, everything's going to be fine because I'm in charge, all the bad things will go away. The bad things don't go away all the time, because usually bad things are there because somebody, somewhere, often people with power, want them to be there because in some way it benefits them. So she's learning the hard way all these problems, and also the fact that she's kind of been neglecting her 2 dragons, the 2 good ones, not the crazy one that flew away and has been eating children. So, that's come back to bite her in the bum. And that's the kind of problem that's happening to everyone at the moment. You've got Brienne and Podrick, they're sort of wandering around, and Brienne just doesn't know what to do with herself because she had this whole thing of, I'm going to go out and rescue the 2 daughters of the lady who helped me. That was Catelyn Stark. After that, it's turned out that, of course, she's not managed to do that. She's failed utterly. And then one of them didn't actually want anything to do with her. And she nearly got beaten up by the Hound, and she ended up killing him. So she's kind of failed all round, and now she just needs something to do. And it was kind of convenient that you saw Sansa and Littlefinger passing by in the carriage. Now, are they going to end up meeting up? We'll see. We'll find out. Whereas meanwhile, all the shenanigans going on in King's Landing, they're all cool. It's all good fun. And generally, this episode's just been really interesting. Although nothing that actually happened in it was particularly amazing, although it is interesting. Now, that's kind of a problem for the first episode back of the season. I mean, you do want everyone to be getting back into the swing of things, and you want to save your big moments for later on. But this is Game of Thrones. It's supposed to be one of the biggest and best shows in the whole world. And this was kind of a dull episode, really, all round. And that leads us kind of nicely into my grumps for the episode. See, regardless of the fact that it was nice to see all the characters again, and that getting everything together was quite good, this was such a slow episode. I mean, especially the Cersei stuff. It wasn't just a huge amount of Lena Headey wandering around, sort of staring off at the middle distance, looking a wee bit pissed off. Now, she's a good actress. She can do much more than this, and yet it feels like it's a one-note character being done really boringly. Also, the decision to have her mad cousin come back, I mean, he's mad now, obviously, because he's turned out a religious nutcase, shaved all his hair off and wears sackcloth, but the fact that he comes back and he's unrecognisable is a terrible decision when they're making the show. I mean, couldn't they have just bleached his hair? Because he's supposed to have kind of like yellowy ginger hair rather than being black-haired, and he's got jet black hair now. I mean, I presume the actor actually does, and they just wanted to use his natural hair rather than put a wig or like bleach it, but it seems a bit ridiculous, because most people are going to look at this, and if they didn't explicitly name him, nobody would know it was actually the same character. Another bad choice was that during the Daenerys scenes, you see the Harpy being toppled off the top of the building, and then you see an Unsullied walk past, and the Unsullied, you have no context for who he is, and for the life of me, I thought that they'd recast Grey Worm, and that this was a new actor playing him, right up until the point when he got his throat cut. Now that's kind of unforgivable on a show like this. You shouldn't worry who a character is and end up thinking that they've just recast an actor, which is one of the problems they've had with the show, because they have recast several people various times with utterly no notice. But it's not the end of the world. And overall, the episode, as I said, wasn't bad. It was an interesting lead into a new series, but it just needs to get a little bit tighter, especially with so many divergent storylines. It's going to be all over the place in no time if they're not careful. But anyway, that was my first review of Game of Thrones Season 5. So, till next week, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions.